What up, naughty steppers? It's Connor Whitmore here again with another review for you on the Nawtystep channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about the new EP from Chime, released on Firepower Records, Featherweight. Real name Harvey Thompson, Yorkshire-based, owner of the Rushdown record label, one of melodic dubstep's finest. Back with his second EP of 2018 already, following April's Experience Points. A collection of songs that stands for me as one of the best this year has had to offer so far. Vibrant and varied, yet simultaneously packing a mighty punch with some seriously gritty dubstep to it, pushing his self-titled colour-based genre further into the limelight. And I think the main thing to note for this newest release, before having listened to it, is that for this EP he has switched labels from Circus to Firepower. Which you may not think anything of, but I think it's important for understanding the differences between labels in terms of the styles they like to adhere to within the umbrella genre of dubstep. So if we're talking about one musician producing for one label and then for another entirely, as is the case with Chime here, then we're talking about two different types of dubstep altogether. Whilst I'd say the emphasis of Experience Points is on Chime's 8-bit melodic approach, Featherweight undoubtedly errs on the heavier side of his production. For me, the fundamental way that this one differs from the previous one is that the dubstep is being reined in by the musicality and not the other way around. There are striking similarities from EP to EP, of course. The glitchiness, twinkly aspects and proper hard-hitting stuff are all there in abundance. Just each collection has a little more of one factor and a little less of the others. The first instance we get of this EP's brutality is in the drop to the opener and title track. An ingenious melodic take on the stop-start structure of RIDDIM, pummeling you with its incessancy, yet so fruity at the same time. Splicing this with a myriad of jittery moments, ensuring that the glitchy element isn't lost amid the sheer force of the drop. In all honesty, it is exactly what you would expect from a Chime-flavoured RIDDIM drop, simple in its layout yet still brimming with character. Unsurprisingly, moreover, Thompson switches things up in the second drop with a more drawn-out, ravenous and gnarly release, reintroducing the glitchy touches with a few small tweaks from the first drop so that the track remains as on its feet and alert as possible in its progression. I also love those grisly underground wubs at 3 minutes 15, giving the track a resurgent energy to propel it towards its reflective piano finish. Furthermore, over time I think it's fair to say that the dubstep becomes more dynamic as Chime seeks to do its Firepower release justice. Following an initial winding down drone of a drop, in the second track Damage alongside former Bad Catholics member Lost Vegas, with this really bombastic rebounding section that blasts its way into existence, a whole manner of sounds squeezing their way in. The winding sequence is broken up slightly to make it seem as if it's catching up on itself, before the bombastic part returns even larger than before, bringing these interjecting whop sounds in to make it sound not too dissimilar to the progression of the drop from Big RIDDIM Monster by Dodge and Fusky and 12th Planet. Dipping back into both sections on multiple occasions throughout the track to provide a real linearity to it, outlining the focal points of it in the process. What I love about this dubstep is its abrasiveness, its standoffish bravado. It puts on a massive front. As if Chime and Lost Vegas, renowned melody lovers, are saying, yeah, we're just going fully hard on this track, and what? The drop to the third track, Smokescreen, is similarly attention-grabbing in its interaction between separate sequences. Starting with an intense groan, followed by a delay, then wildly helter-skelter, then staggered, then a delay again, then a bit jittery, then staggered once more, but climbing this time. It just throws you this way and that, fitting for the manipulated vocal sample before the drop that indicates not everything is entirely in order. But once again, Thompson is on hand to provide stability amidst the madness, with a really animated yet engaging and rounded sequence following that. It's on the second drop, however, that we become aware of the mark that this track really wants to leave on us. Succeeding a classic belch with some more drawn out wubs, very in your face. The song at this point is extremely full and layered, each sound working well towards the whole. And it's at this point that I must say there is a somewhat inescapable crescendo dubstep-wise towards the final track, Missing No or Missing Number. Because if there's any cut on this EP that made me really turn my head and question whether it was Chime producing it, considering how heavy it is, then it's undoubtedly this one. Here, Thompson goes full artificial intelligence battle scene with these huge robotic noises, very muddied and frazzled yet interspersed with an appropriate amount of more dynamic moments. The second drop throwing even more at you in what is just a crazy whirlwind of sounds. It's genuinely mind-melting and difficult to keep up with every newness that it offers. All of which is backed up by these growls in the builds, which set up the drops really well, bracing us for what's about to be unleashed. It submerses you in filth, to the point where, by the end, when the wasteland becomes clear, you just have to concede defeat and say, yep, I give up, the robots have won. God, what a horrible thought. Overtly heavy, yet still pretty dainty all the same, and that is the Chime flavour being sprinkled in effortlessly once again. My emphasis on the drops to this point has been to make clear just how heavy an EP this is for a usually melodic producer like Chime. And in contrast to the Experience Points EP, which, whilst undoubtedly very heavy, is undeniably more colourful in that pursuit. But, as I implied earlier, this isn't to say that Featherweight isn't without its airy dreaminess to boot. Because come on guys, would it really be a Chime EP without that? One of my favourite parts of the EP is in Smokescreen, with that wobbly, bubbly bit of the introduction, in between the jumpy vocal chopping. It's a really absorbing freeze-frame moment that just has a really nice time-stopping quality to it whenever it enters, which is on multiple occasions, so I'm happy for that. Also in Smokescreen are those airy, high-pitched yoy sounds at 2 minutes 31. This is a perfect example of the heaviness being reined in through a lighter lens. You also have the second main drop of damage, remarkably euphoric considering its surroundings, and the main melody following that goes on a truly sumptuous journey. I imagine that Las Vegas would have had a significant part to play in these moments, so credit where it's due for his input in this collaboration. This track also represents the EP's standout vocal samples, which come from someone called JonTron, who apparently is a YouTuber. Him saying that's a lot of damage before the damage of the dubstep has been done is a cheeky little point of irony, I must say, especially with that word being the title and centre of the track too. This section with the high-pitched woe sounds from the title track. God, that is beautiful! Being taken down an octave in concurrence with the chord changes, it's really, really sweet. I think the title track possesses my favourite outright musical parts, which I would never have expected to say with the RIDDIM track of the four, but there we go. The 8-bit video game theme is also very evident in his tunage once again. Whether it's the opening to the EP, parts of the introduction to Damage, the glitchy break before the second drop of Smokescreen, or even the start to Missing Number, which has that initial oozy and electrified feel, but proceeds to come slightly muddied. I think this is the one point in the EP where he doesn't quite strike a harmony between all his component parts. As an extension of this video game inspired distortion, there's a fair amount of delay in these 4 tracks too. Most present in the drops to the third track of course, but also in the second drop to the second, the introduction of the first, and the progression of the drops in the fourth. Something Chime dabbles in generally. I'm not too fond of it. The disruption of his flow doesn't quite sit with me. But hey, it's such a small part within the wider context of these ridiculously complex constructions that I'm happy to let them slide. And if he thinks it works for his music, which it definitely does because he's included it, then I'm going to try as hard as I can to realise its function. Another transition point in terms of talking about this EP in light of the last one, the builds are still crazily brief for the most part. I think I prefer them here. They seem more refined and concentrated, working towards the general goal of their respective songs. But yeah, I think this is one aspect of his style that he could work on, expanding them to make his sound even more epic, something which I think he knows already. And as a last little side note, I'm not sure entirely how this will sound, but I do really appreciate an EP every now and then that just lets the music do the talking and has no vocalists on it. A seeming rarity these days, and it was only in coming to the end of these 4 tracks that I realised how refreshing it was to be completely subsumed in these instrumentals. But once again, I found myself with very little negative feedback for a Chime EP. He continues to push boundaries by adapting, yet still making his staple sound so clear to the ear. Also reveals a side to Chime that we've not heard before in arguably his most remorseless multi-track project yet. More evidence of him exceeding himself, taking risks, trying things out, and all to a very high quality, which is all you could really ask for from an electronic music producer. He adapts very well for the Firepower label, the dubstep is noticeably harsher. Is there a more flexible dubstepper than him right now? I would love to hear a bass house track from him or something similar. I think he can really go ham with the experimentation in the near future. I've honed in on the heaviness of this EP, yet it's still incredibly musical. The animation of his style is clear as day. That ability to blend is potentially his #1 skill. Really is so much to talk about. I've delved right in here, but once again it's one of those where I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. And it's not as if there are 1 or 2 good tracks here and the rest are weaker. There are truly amazing bits in every song, whether it's the straight up heavy, catchy, attention grabbing, well assembled. And I can't leave without giving my love for the title of this EP, fitting for Chime's light, melodic take on these heavy, gnarly genres. I guess the biggest problem I have with this is, how does he keep this up? 3 more EPs to come from him this year, and it's a very high bar that he's set. But witnessing the consistency in quality from experience points to Featherweight, I don't have much doubt that this will continue in the coming months. He just seems to have really stepped things up in 2018, because I must admit I can't remember enjoying his Firepower EP from last year, Invincible, all that much. But this is another really great EP, and I don't say that lightly, making me extremely excited for everything else he's going to put out before 2019. Now in terms of a favourite from the EP, then I think I would have to go with Smokescreen. He calls it his heaviest track ever, which obviously I love, but I think this one also mixes in the lighter parts most seamlessly, a very well-rounded example of Chime's style to be honest. And in terms of recommendations, then I think the closest thing we have to Chime right now is Ace Aura. Not quite of the same quality just yet, but I can see him getting there. Check out his Exodus EP, which was released I think last month, if not the month before. And so that is that for another bumper review on the Nawtystep channel, this time of Chime's new EP released on Firepower Records, Featherweight. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. Be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on Featherweight. What did you guys make of it? Which track was your favourite? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hitting that notification bell along the way so you can be notified whenever I upload to the Nawtystep channel. Next to my head there should be some other Firepower Records reviews and also my review of Chime's Experience Points EP, so if you enjoyed this one then check those out too. And don't forget to like and follow Nawtystep across all social media if you haven't already, with everything linked including that sole recommendation in the description box down below. And lastly, if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure as always to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see you all in the next one. Peace out.